So is Sapphire finally tier 0? What is that going to mean for this current meta? All of that and more we're going to be discussing right now. So the big thing with this is, of course, Sapphire, that we're seeing so far is that it seems like it's dominating the meta, and in a lot of ways that is incredibly true. We've seen over the past couple of weeks exactly that there have been a lot of Ruby Sapphire decks that have gone ahead and won a lot of major tournaments, so far as Sapphire Steel as well being able to do the same exact thing. Now with that, that's going to be a little bit difficult to be able to see with everything else that might be going on, and it's like, well, now is Sapphire too strong? And it's like, it might be a little bit too strong. There's a couple of things that might be a little bit too out of the ordinary for this that might make it just go to that very next level, especially with all the support that it's been able to have these past two sets. With that being said, though, there was some really interesting stuff upon looking into this a little bit further that I want to kind of dive into with you guys today on what the problem might very well be with Sapphire thus far, and maybe what we could do to maybe go ahead and fix that as well. Now, with that, of course, there's going to be this first message right here, which is a really interesting one. Now, of course, it's from NVR Terrace Black. You could go ahead and find him on X as well. And he says, I love how they have a whole stream telling us that they've extensively playtested these cards and they wouldn't be a problem and have since been radio silent. Can they stop slapping the word free on cards, especially in the color that gets to be 20 turns ahead on ink? And in a lot of ways, yes, a lot of this very well might be valid, especially looking at the Tamatoa that they added in here as well. He is an incredibly powerful card. Probably, if not, yeah, he is, no sugarcoating that. He is the most powerful card in this set. Just being able to fish everything back out that you were able to spend, and then being able to play an item for free. If you go ahead and get him quested, he's going to be able to play a lucky dime for free. Boop, just like that. Yep, yeah, that's pretty good, especially if that's a lucky dime. It would have been interesting to see if they would have put like a limit on that to where, like, if he quested, he could play an item for, heck, even 6 or less would be an interesting thing to be able to say. Just like his own cost or less would be really interesting. And so I get why, he might be a little bit frustrated with how these cards have played out. Now, I do believe that, they did extensively play test these cards in a lot of ways, and we're able to get things leveled out pretty well. I still do believe, yes, that Sapphire is easily the most powerful color combination that we have in this set, by a good margin almost. The biggest thing about that, though, is that it is not still the most dominant. When you do have something in the meta that is so widely played by everyone, I mean, you're seeing Ruby Sapphire and you're seeing Sapphire Steel being the two most played decks in every single tournament. There's no way around that. You're playing Blue Steel aggro, you're playing Blue Steel items. We even saw aggro kind of dip out a little bit on that, but there's still a lot of blue steel that is getting played. On top of that, even, there still is, even with that, a lot going on with now Ruby Sapphire finally making its way back into the meta. Even so much so that cards that combinations like Ruby Amethyst isn't even necessarily being played anymore. You're seeing a little bit going in with like EA discard coming in. You're seeing a lot of aggro being viable, the Amethyst Steel being a really good color combination. But you're not necessarily seeing a whole lot of representation from any other colors, which is really interesting. And it's like, well, duh, it's going to look like this deck is going to be all dominant, How could you not see that this deck would be all dominant when it's the number one most represented color in this meta? I mean, we saw that with Ruby Sapphire. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Ruby Sapphire in set 6 was incredibly good, and it was the top deck of last set. But even still, with that, of course, people are going to be most representing that deck. But even still, you still saw a great deal of people playing Ruby Amethyst, Steel Song, and things of that nature to be able to get those things taken care of as well. And the thing is, though, yes, the most represented cards are winning, but we are seeing a lot of other colors still make a good impact to where it's not necessarily going into that tier 0 meta mentality, but it's still able to get a lot done. And and look, I'm not discounting Blue Steel or Ruby Sapphire anyway in this. I mean, it is a very powerful color combination. Should they have made Bell the dual color card, being Sapphire Ruby colored as well, just like the Shift line in that case? That would have made a big difference as well. I mean, Blue Steel would have still been a pretty good deck. I mean, yes, the Bell does basically take that to tier 1 status. Even still, you would still have the Scrooge McDuck that could still be a sapphire color, and it wouldn't necessarily break Blue Steel as much as having Bell and Blue Steel. Sapphire Coil is also a really interesting one, being able to -2 attack from anything just by inking. That's a very powerful thing as well, especially when you do think about having the Sisus out there as well, or even just being able to attack into something and take 2 less damage just because you play an ink for turn. That's pretty great. But at the same time, it still feels like this meta is very healthy in a lot of ways. I mean, if we go ahead and take a look at, a lot of the tournaments that we're seeing right here, yes, like I've said, a lot of them being made, or a lot of winning decks are going to be the two main colors of Ruby Sapphire and Sapphire Steel. But even still, like I said, there is still a wide variety in the top 16 and even in the top 8 that are seeing, their way breaking into the top of the leaderboards for their respective tournaments. And so, yes, don't get me wrong. This is a little bit of a problem, but I don't think it's as big of a problem as what everyone is saying that it is. I do think that yes, this tweet or whatever this post, I guess we call it now, is still has a lot of very valid points in the sense of that yes, they are very broken cards, but at the same time, you know, Sapphire Steel, especially the item build, still does have a lot that it needs to be able to do to be able to go off. And yes, the Tamatoa definitely helps with that. The Bell being able to go ahead and sing, as a 3 cost going in is incredibly good as well, but it's still not necessarily dominating. And here's the interesting thing too, and I want you to really consider this too, is that as you go throughout this kind of meta, if everything was equally represented, how many times would Ruby Sapphire or Sapphire Steel actually win these tournaments? And yes, don't get me wrong, I would still say that they would be still winning a lot of tournaments, respectively, yes. But at the same time, there would be many, many other decks that would be able to do so at a very high level. I mean, just now we've seen, even on this last weekend, we saw a Amber Steel aggro deck that was able to move into second place, which is absolutely insane as well. And we've been able to see things like EA Discard being able to start to move up the ranks as well. Amethyst Steel, well, I definitely don't think that it's a top deck, but it's still been able to get a couple of top 8 finishes, you know. And with that, I still feel like this meta is still in a very healthy spot. And, next set, guess what? Ravensburg is going to probably look at this and be like, hey, this is where, yeah, Sapphire is probably the strongest. This time they might not get as much support. We might be seeing a little bit more of Amber Steel getting support. We might be seeing more Ruby getting support, especially maybe giving a Ruby Steel card draw so that Ruby Steel, that deck combination with the Mushu could even get a little bit of a boost as well, because that's a big thing that it's really suffering from right now is it's just not having a whole lot of card draw, so it falls a little bit behind. There's still a lot out here, and we're still in a very healthy place with this new meta or with these new things that have been coming out, especially with the dual inks as well. And there's even a couple of things that we could do in the meantime. If it really gets bad enough, we might even see necessarily some bans that might be coming about here. Now, and this is one thing that I really want to kind of consider here too. It's like, yeah, we might be able to get some bans in, sure. And one thing that I really want to kind of keep in and consider is if we do get to the point where we do need to put in some bans, it could be very interesting to be able to see that we might be able to even ban certain cards from certain color combinations. And it would be really interesting to see if Ravensburg actually went in and, banned Bell from Blue Steel deck lists. It was available in all other deck lists, but it just wasn't necessarily available for that specific color combination. So if you wanted to use it in Ruby Sapphire, you very well could, or any other combination outside of that specifically banned color, and that might be something very interesting to consider. And yes, there might be those cards that just outright completely overpower things that might need to be banned in that case. I mean, I still do, even though, don't get me wrong, discard is not necessarily in that tier 1 meta. I mean, I do believe that Amethyst Emerald is in that tier 1 meta so long as it is discard in that case, but at the same time, the Prince John is still even more broken than the Diablo, just mainly due to the fact that it has ward and the ability that is able to be activated while it is in the ready position. There's certain things that definitely can be fixed in that regard, but at the same time, this is still a healthy enough meta that I do believe that rotations are going to be coming in long before we see anything like a ban list, for example. They are still testing extensively. I don't doubt that by any means, and I do believe that we are seeing a very healthy meta here. Sapphire just happens to be the most powerful thing, and is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's not, it's not that way either way. I still feel like we have a lot of really good decks out there that are really exciting, and now going into pretty much the first month of this meta being out, it's really exciting to be able to see what we've been able to have so far. And I mean, we have the next set that's going to be coming out in a couple of months as well. I feel like a lot of this very well could be fixed by that next set as well. So be patient. Ravensburg is still learning a lot of things, and they are doing a very good job with this card game as well. And your complaints are definitely valid, but I just don't think it's as warranted as it should be. But regardless, go ahead and let me know down in the comments below on what you think about this. Am I wrong? How wrong am I? Go ahead and tell me. And with that being said, guys, hope you have a good rest of your time. What deck is your favorite to pilot and why? Hope to see you next time, and until then, have a good one.